that is one of the benefits with these monoglyceride blends is that we have proof across three very different models. They can definitely improve gut health and overall performance in the bird.
Welcome to the Poultry Podcast Show. Today I'm here with Dr. Danielle Graham, and we're going to have a great talk. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here again.
I'm so excited to talk to you about another topic. But first, I want to hear, how is the semester going for you down in Arkansas?
Everything's going great. We just wrapped up the first applied poultry parasitology course that we offered here in the department, and so that was a blast. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really sad to actually see the semester come to a close.
Those lab courses are difficult. You have to come up with a lot of stuff de novo. I mean, kudos to you.
Well, yeah, no, it was fun. I had a great group of students, though, so that helped a lot.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear that there's still courses in development, because everybody being strapped for time, it can be hard to have creativity,
right?
To come up with a course. So great. That's really exciting. I would have loved to take a parasitology course as an undergrad or a grad student, so I'm jealous. Awesome. Well, today I want to talk to you about some other work that you're doing inside and out of your challenge models, revolving around like monoglyceride blends and some organic acids. Can you tell us what you've been working on in those areas?
Yeah. We spoke last time about what my group does. And so, in brief, we develop different models to simulate commercial conditions, whatever that may be, usually disease models, to evaluate alternatives to antibiotics or formaldehyde fumigation, anything that's necessary. And specifically when it comes to the organic acid and monoglyceride blends, we've used a nutritional type model where we used basically a mixture of raw, overcooked, and normal soybean meal to create, something with a lower nutrient value, and then compared that to a normal diet. And so we actually saw some improvement with some of these monoglyceride blends in that model. And we've evaluated them also with a necrotic enteritis model and Enterococcus cecorum model. And so obviously not every type of monoglyceride or organic acid or their blend would be effective in all of those scenarios. But different combinations of those in the diet can improve performance, at least in our case. And so I know that was like a broad overview of what we've done, but I was hoping to tell you what we've done with, those additives and in the context of how we've used them in my lab.
Yeah, so the first model that you talked about with the over and under or not cooked soybean meal, did you have to process those yourself, or did you source some of that stuff commercially? Like, do you know of the incidence of overcooking soybean meal? I know that someone probably knows, but I don't.
Yeah, so I'm not a nutritionist, so this was definitely outside of my wheelhouse. And when Dr. Kyle Teague was here as a postdoc in the department, he helped a lot with that project. So he would be better to ask about the specific nutritional questions. But in regards to processing the soybean meal, yes, we sourced the raw, and then obviously what we deem normal. And then by overcooking, we autoclaved for an extended period of time based off of what's in the literature. And so that combination of those, a 1-to-1-to-1 mixture, was what was used as basically the low quality soybean meal in comparison to a diet that had 100% of that normal soybean meal component. And it was quite interesting in hindsight. And if we do it again, we'll definitely apply some of those, nutritional strategies when it comes to analyzing the diet and things like that, because we don't know the amount of trypsin inhibitor, which is essential, right? Because it's outside of our field, or my field at least, I can see where there were some gaps. For sure. But we did see improvements with certain blends of those monoglycerides in terms of performance.
Eastman serves veterinarians and nutritionists in agrochemical and animal health industries by helping them select, evaluate, and implement innovative nutritional programs. Eastman works with your team to customize your gut health approach in feed and water. Eastman's approach addresses nutritional and bacterial challenges and finds new ingredient preservation and hygiene solutions. Explore ways to accelerate and innovate your programs. Contact the animal nutrition team at eastman.com.
So I know that we often work with some different companies or whatever when you get these trials. Was the work that you did blends that you got to put together, or did it come kind of as like a company trial?
Yeah, it came as product A, B, C, D.
Sure.
And,
okay.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what we tested, but I did know that they were essentially some type of monoglyceride blends.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. So did you take those the same products or the same categories? You just put them across different model types, which I think is kind of neat. It was kind of the same product being tested in different cases. Was that the gist of the series?
Yeah, so, we're usually blind to a lot of that. So I'm not sure exactly what we tested, but I do know there were a couple of candidates that made it through, I believe, all three models. And the impact or the benefit was related to improved body weight gain and lower feed conversion ratio. And then when we got, into the necrotic enteritis studies and the Enterococcus cecorum studies, you could suspect that the improved performance was associated with perhaps that additive improving gut integrity, which we've confirmed that with fitsidextran. And so it was definitely in line with the performance. You had lower leaky gut compared to the other groups, depending on the product. And so as you'd expect, some of those longer medium chain monoglyceride blends were more effective when it came to the gram-positive bacteria.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I think that is such an interesting way to screen, because you actually got to go in depth a little bit about what environment that these different potential future products or existing products could have been used in. Because I think that's one of the fallbacks of some nutrition work, is that in a perfect setting, sometimes the intervention might not work because there's not enough of a challenge. But you got to look at nutritional challenge from suboptimal soybean, and then you got to look at some disease challenges. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, no, when I came into this role, my goal was to try to make a difference, not if I can provide any, input or anything, it would be find something that works, even if it's just marginally, and then test it against whatever you think, validate it, right? Don't just run it through one model. And that is one of the benefits with these monoglyceride blends, is that we have proof across three very different models. They can definitely improve gut health and overall performance in the bird. So that's been pretty cool to kind of follow that out over the last couple of years, because I feel like what we all test a lot of different products, right? In my experience, 99% of those products never work in the models that we, because in some cases they're too harsh, or we'll develop a new model to try to, see if we can capture any benefits with that product. But, I believe in some of these things that we're testing where we see it across different challenges for sure.
I honestly think one of the biggest deals with a nutritional feed, a delivery system that happens with feed, I guess, is that bird has to feel good enough to keep eating. Otherwise, it's not exposed to the product. So there's potential sitting there in the feed, but the bird is just thinking, no way, I don't feel good enough. So showing impact where feed intake is maybe not as good as control, but it's increased, I think is really huge.
Yeah. Well, and that's where there may be the, economic impact associated with these additives, but you have to make the decision to put them in the feed before you have the problem, right?
Yeah. 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 And your necrotic enteritis model is pretty serious. So I totally understand that you can't just test it against that, because that's like, pulling out the big guns.
Exactly. And so, like when folks come to us now, it's like, what do you know about the product? Maybe let's not throw it right into that harsh. I mean, it's what we have to do to reproduce necrotic enteritis in a laboratory setting, but like, what can we tease out before we get to that part? Because a lot of folks come to us with this, just basically the initial product that's never been tested, and they don't have even a proper dose titration of the product inclusion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so,
So what do you think about, I mean, not getting too deep into the nutrition, but what are some maybe key inputs that a company can have at their ready when they approach someone like you to talk about what model might be most appropriate? Like what information is helpful for you as a researcher when they approach you with the golden egg of a product?
Well, yeah, like I guess openness, and they make NDAs and things like that if everyone wants protection, but you and I aren't here to take, their idea, their product. Is to try to help them identify ways to show how their product, if it has a benefit, then, we can help them do that. So it's just like, tell us some information about what the product is, and how it's worked previously. Here's an example. Like if you're testing, a saponin, essential oil, some phytogenic feed additive that does not reduce oocyst output or shedding, oocyst output or shedding. That's good to know. Let's not measure that, and let's focus on the stuff that you think it is actually helping with.
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't reduce output doesn't mean that it may not be a meaningful product. And so I find that type of relationship definitely helps the research end up being more productive in the end.
Yeah. I think just on the lines of potential products to help with coccidiosis, gosh, the shedding and the lesion scoring are so hard if the birds are not cycling together. So it also, I think, knowing the way previous work was set up is also so important if they're happy to provide that information. You're right.
And and I have some folks that I work with where they'll share previous reports fully, and we can go through them together, and it definitely helps make an informed decision when it comes to moving forward with their research. And it's, in a cost-effective way too.
Yeah.
So those are my favorite relationships for sure.
So for some of the people who didn't listen to some of the previous podcasts, maybe can you just give a brief update or outline of the two different disease models that you use? And because we've been talking about them already, and I'm familiar with them, but maybe not everyone listening might not know.
Yeah, so, the necrotic enteritis model that we utilize was one developed in the Hargis lab previously. So it's a Salmonella typhimurium challenge at hatch, followed by an Eimerium maxima challenge at day 18, and then you follow that up with 2 to 3 Clostridium perfringens challenges. And so, as you can imagine, it does sound pretty harsh, but in the clean environment, it's our best method to get consistent results, and target a lesion score of approximately 2 and a body weight gain reduction of roughly 25%. But still, even a body weight gain reduction of 25%, that's hard to overcome with a natural type additive, right? So the Enterococcus saccharum models that we've been developing have focused on late embryogenesis, or the hatching phase. And specifically the model that we've used to evaluate some of these monoglyceride blends in the diet was one where we inoculated a subset of the embryos at day 19 of embryogenesis with virulent Enterococcus saccharum, and commingled those with non-infected counterparts in the hatch cabinet. And so as those infected seeders, as we call them, hatched, they disseminate saccharum to those non-infected or contact chicks in the hatch cabinet. We did a lot of previous work to get to that point, 2 masters, but I know it was a lot, but totally worth it. We'll take those contact chicks that have been exposed and feed them different feed additives to see if there's any impact. And with some of the longer medium chain fatty acid monoglyceride blends, we've definitely seen increased body weight gain over a 28-day period, and reduced feed conversion ratio, and actually lower intestinal permeability too in those groups. And we're working to figure out, more of the mode of action with that particular combination of the monoglyceride blend compared to the non-treated groups right now. We're doing some gene expression work. So
yeah, it makes you kind of wonder, because of that, the model where you're affecting chicks or even before they hatch, if that blend would be important to include in a breeder diet, that, one step further, one step prior.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing is like the reason we like the challenge model for Secorum during the hatching phase is because you don't really have to worry about colonization by other bacteria. You're seeding the environment, so you should mostly get, the pioneer colonizer should be that Secorum isolate.
Yeah.
If we get chicks from a hatchery, they're going to already be colonized by, E. coli, faecalis. And so it makes it difficult to get, at least in my experience, reproduce the Enterococcus secorum associated septicemia and things like that if you wait until you have them, if you get them from the hatchery. But yeah, definitely utilizing a breeder diet, there may be some benefit. And we've recovered secorum from the vertebrae of the contact chicks at hatch. So that's enough time for it to, just the hatching phase is enough time for it to translocate to the vertebrae. And when we, utilize that model and place the birds in battery cages, we'll get femoral head necrosis in the contacts, I'm telling you, in 28 days. And so,
that's insane.
I know. And so, the industry's just kind of up against the wall with some of these hatchery-associated opportunistic pathogens, right?
Gosh, that is just so, it's honestly, it makes me feel creepy crawly that it is like going to the spine. It's ready to ruin your entire life.
Yeah, and I don't know how some of these, birds are standing at necropsy. They look healthy and they're fine. And then when you post them, it's like, the pericarditis is just out of this world, and they're stronger than I am. I don't know how they withstand it, but
I just feel like the prey animal aspect is always huge, because even with the necrotic enteritis model that we use based on your work and Dr. Hargis's work, some of those birds would like to say they're feeling okay, but inside they are not.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's worse with turkeys.
Yeah.
It's wild. So it's not like you can go through and cull the unthrifty ones, because in some cases you can't tell.
Yeah. It always amazes me that aspect of a prey animal and hiding how they're truly feeling. I'm always blown away by how stoic birds have to be to survive.
I know. And maybe we'd be the same if we were in, settings.
Yeah. Hey, I'm fine. I don't speak your language, but I'm fine.
I'm healthy, don't.
Is there anything else kind of major about the models that you use or the way that you're evaluating the organic acids and the monoglycerides that might be important to say?
I think the biggest thing is, do a dose titration of whatever, product or blend that you're evaluating, because as with anything, too much may not always be a good thing. And it's probably way more expensive than would be, commercially applicable. But start with a dose titration. You could do some, in vitro work before then, but dose titration, start with, someone that you're happy to work with, where you can have a relationship where you can figure out the best, initial steps for testing the product, and what those would be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important. And something that I run across, and it's even in just nutrition literature in general, is that sometimes the dose that you wish to use might be difficult for a feed mill to incorporate, just, because of decimals. Let's just say it's scaling or cost. But also, it seems like sometimes there's a competing interest for something that might be useful for just general performance versus a disease challenge. And that's hard because we're not going to go reformulate. We can't reformulate in advance of a disease challenge, right? But you said, titrations might hurt them in just a general growth performance aspect, but might be helpful. A higher dose might be helpful during a disease challenge. So it's so hard.
I know. It's really hard. And the other problem is every flock is different, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every flock has, somewhat of a different microflora and different challenges, whatever environmental, disease-related, nutritional, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so with, these natural type products, that kind of makes it a little more difficult too.
Yeah, and the variability between lots, man, for these, especially the smaller organic acids or things that might be not as concentrated at certain types, based on how the product is produced. Man, so much variability.
Yeah. And, the essential oils, I'm not a chemist. I don't know enough about them, but they do make me a little nervous.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make sure that you're getting the same quality and consistency over time? Because that has to make a difference, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The potency, 100%, yeah. And the growing conditions in the field for the plant which you're isolating them from. I mean,
yeah,
got to pull the agronomists in here to save us.
Well, this is an aside, but I think I saw that you guys had a paper where you were the way the hay was cut. I thought It was so cool.
Yeah.
I thought that was so interesting, and I had never thought about that. And
there's often times where you have to work across so many fields, right? And I wish I knew more about basically plant immunity, because by the time that plant gets damaged and cut several times, it feels a lot different. It grows different. It produces different factors than the first time it gets assaulted by a mower,
Yeah.
So that stuff is so interesting. Like plant physiology and growing conditions and factors it produces to protect itself over the lifespan are, wow.
It makes you want to go get another PhD, right?
I know. I could do PhDs in so many areas, but there's a point where you got to just be your own expert and you collaborate. So
yeah, exactly. But yeah, well done on that. That was so interesting.
Thank you. So before we wrap up, I want to ask you 3 questions that relate to the work that you talked to today.
It's time for our famous 3. Your partner in improving animal performance, Berg & Schmidt. They believe the following additives are necessary in the poultry dietary. Functional lipids for an efficient dietary energy management. Phospholipids for emulsification, achieving a better nutrient intake. MCTs to provide energy and modulate the microflora within the intestines and enzymes for elevated use of fibrous materials and byproducts.
Are there any favorite or important resources that are poultry related, that really helped you along with this specific project?
Oh, I'm trying to not say the same thing as I said last time. I can't remember. The avian diseases, histopathology. There's a book. I can look it up and email you the title of it, but that helped a lot as we've gone through some of these necropsies and postings for the Enterococcus saccharum specific project. That would probably have been the most helpful overall.
Yeah. Is there a non-poultry related resource that you've been in contact with lately? I'm kind of on a podcast kick, so I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I have been on a podcast kick, but I want people to know about this, so I'll say it again. The Essentialism book. I think everyone needs to read that, especially folks who, like you and myself, we have a lot of interest, right? It could be plant pathology and anything like that, but it's like being pulled in way too many directions can be counterproductive sometimes. It's fun, but
Gosh, you're so right. Oh, and what is your best advice, especially now during finals week, for someone to be successful as they move into maybe a poultry career?
Just, really just never say never, and like don't be afraid of trying new things. I wouldn't be where I'm at if I said that we couldn't do a certain model. I mean, I admitted at the very beginning I am not a nutritionist, and I collaborated with Kyle Teague on the soybean meal project, but it's like, just try it and just find the best resource or human that you can to help, that would be willing to help, and just give it a shot. You may make a huge difference, or find something new. And so
Yeah.
I find a lot of folks who are just like, I must stay in my area, or I must no, I can't do that. I only do this. And it's like, why box yourself in? So just open up your box and try some things. But also, don't get too spread thin. That's why the Essentialism book also comes in. So
Yeah. I think your advice might boil down to get your circus and then contain it.
yeah, exactly.
Try some new things in there, but make sure you have a set of boundaries so your monkeys stay under the big top.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you for chatting with me again. I love chatting to you just about general science. It's always good time, so thank you.
No, yeah, thank you. I had a blast. I enjoy it every time.